If you accept this idea that the root level of digital technology is accelerating at a faster rate, and all of these, as technology continues to double its capacity at the rate that it does, and it takes electricity for that to happen. You just look at Bitcoin as one example of the electricity intensity of just one organization in one field in financial services. You see where this is going. Digital acceleration requires scalable, bulletproof electric power. This is the size of the global information technology market writ large. By writ large, I mean everything from semiconductors to computer hardware to computer software to the consultancies around all of that. Today it's a $4 trillion industry, or about 5% of global GDP. Satya says it's going to be 10% of global GDP by 2030, but the global GDP won't be 80 trillion. It'll be more like 100 to 120 trillion. So the global IT market will be a $10 to trillion industry, a heavily electricity consuming industry by 2030. Let's get physical again. What does this mean? Well, when you had Mark Mills here 3 years ago, I don't know if he'd yet written Digital Cathedrals, but he talks about the construction growth in what he calls digital cathedrals. You know, his thesis is that every industrial age produces buildings that are kind of symbols of that industrial age. So the skyscrapers in New York, which the Woolworth building of 1913, and then the Empire State Building of 1929, and then all the buildings that have followed around the world, were the symbol of the industrial age at its peak, its literal peak. The architectural symbol of the digital age is kind of boring. They're just big freaking data centers and warehouses, and they're in places largely where you don't see them, you know, which is why it's easy to underestimate their importance. But an example of how big they are, the top 5 American cloud architects, you just saw them on the slide of market value, are spending $250 billion a year annually to build out cloud infrastructure. That's a physical thing that makes the cloud happen. The cloud has achieved only 25% of data center penetration, going to 50%, going to 75%, the numbers will invert, but already consumes 12% of the world's electricity. So it's going to consume something on the order of 25 to 40% of the world's electricity by 2030. Square foot of a data center inhales 100 times as much electricity as does a square foot of a skyscraper. And it's not exactly like the Empire State Building or the equivalent, let's imagine a modern skyscraper with higher electricity needs. It's not like they're a light footprint when it comes to electricity, and yet these data centers just absolutely crush them in terms of the amount of electricity per square foot.